Rin Calder moved through the foggy corridors of the abandoned mining outpost, his boots crunching on the metal-grated floors. The air smelled of rust and old machinery, mixed with a faint, strange sweetness he couldn't place. He had been alone for hours, checking the old power nodes that still hummed weakly, ensuring the systems hadn't failed entirely. But ever since sunrise he had felt it, a presence that followed him just out of sight. Every time he glanced over his shoulder, nothing was there, only shadows stretching oddly in the dim light. Rin stopped for a moment, brushing sweat from his forehead. Probably just my nerves, he muttered to himself. He had been working on this outpost for months, and the stories of dragons were old legends long dead. Still, the feeling prickled at the back of his neck. Something moved in the shadows, something small, yet intelligent. He continued down the corridor, checking each room. Tools were scattered, rusted from years of neglect, and old crates leaned at dangerous angles. Every so often, he saw small scratches on the walls, tiny claw marks, shallow like they were made by a young animal. Rin paused again, his hand instinctively reaching for the small plasma cutter at his belt. He had faced hostile creatures before, but nothing this subtle. Whatever it wasn't trying to attack, only to watch. A low hiss echoed from the far end of the hall, soft and almost musical. Rin froze. He listened carefully. The sound came again, a whispering chirp, faint but distinct. He shook his head, trying to convince himself it was just a wind leak. Yet instinct told him otherwise. The air had a new warmth, like something breathing nearby. Something alive. Rin crept forward, careful not to make too much noise. As he turned a corner, he saw movement, a tiny shape darting behind a stack of metal crates. The shape was too quick, too small to identify clearly, but it left a faint trail of heat on the scanner built into his wrist. He crouched, peering over the edge. The scanner's readings spiked momentarily, then fell again. Whatever it was intelligent, not a mindless predator. He sighed, rubbing his eyes. "You're not supposed to be here," he said aloud. He waited for a reaction. The silence stretched. Then a small, glowing eye appeared, peeking from behind the crates. The eye was golden, bright even in the dim light. Rin's heart skipped a beat. He had seen the stories, old archives of dragon species that had vanished centuries ago. The eye matched the description of a hatchling, young, small, vulnerable. Before he could think, a soft chirp came again. This time he could sense fear, confusion, and curiosity all at once. The tiny creature stepped forward slowly, showing its small body, no larger than a backpack. Its scales shimmered faintly, almost iridescent under the weak light, and its wings were folded clumsily against its sides. It looked at him, tilting its head as if weighing whether he was friend or foe. Rin's hands went to his knees. "Hey there," he whispered gently. "I won't hurt you." The creature froze, then stepped closer, its small claws clicking softly on the metal floor. It let out a little puff of warm air, almost like a sigh. Rin knelt fully, holding out a hand. He didn't expect it to touch him, yet the hatchling moved closer, brushing against his boots. Its warmth was real, pulsing softly, almost like it was alive in more ways than just body. The feeling struck Rin hard. He had spent years working in isolation, trusting only machines and data. And yet, this fragile, curious creature seemed to see something in him. He couldn't explain it, but he felt a connection forming, subtle and immediate. The stories of dragons were not just myths. They were warnings, lessons, and now, possibly a chance. Rin glanced around the empty hall. If anyone saw this, they would call it madness. Dragons were extinct, their kind erased by time and human greed. Yet here it was, a living, breathing hatchling following him without fear. It chirped again, hopping onto the edge of a crate, then looking at him with those golden eyes. Rin couldn't help but smile. "Looks like you've chosen me," he said softly, crouching so he was level with it. The hatchling blinked, almost as if it understood. Then it stepped closer, brushing its tiny head against his boot. Rin laughed quietly, a sound he hadn't realized he had held in for weeks. "I guess you're coming with me," he said. The creature chirped happily, flapping its tiny wings, though it couldn't fly yet. The morning passed in a blur. Rin moved through the outpost slowly, checking equipment, making minor repairs, all while the hatchling followed, never leaving his side. It explored cautiously, sniffing at machinery, curling around his boots whenever he stopped. Every time he turned, it was there, patient, curious, and unafraid. By the time the sun reached its peak, the hatchling had made itself at home on Rin's feet. It shifted and curled there, tiny claws gripping gently, warmth radiating upward. Rin felt a strange sense of responsibility, a bond that went beyond fear or survival. He knew this creature depended on him now, and he could not turn away. Rin paused at a window, looking out over the vast, fog-shrouded landscape. The abandoned outpost seemed quieter, almost alive in the presence of the hatchling. He felt something stir inside him, a sense of purpose long dormant. The shadow that had followed him all morning was no longer a threat. It was a companion, fragile but strong, choosing to trust him without question. He smiled again, letting the small creature rest. "Don't worry, little one. I'll keep you safe." The hatchling chirped softly, a sound almost like laughter. Rin knew that nothing would ever be the same. The quiet, empty halls of the outpost were now filled with life, hope, and the beginning of a bond that could change everything. For the first time in years, Rin Calder felt truly seen, not by humans, not by machines, but by something far older, far wiser, and far more alive than he had ever imagined. Rin Calder walked carefully through the maze of metal corridors, the small dragon hatchling still curled at his boots. He had never expected to see a creature like this in his lifetime, and yet here it was, alive and breathing, its tiny golden eyes fixed on him with an almost human curiosity. Every step he took, the hatchling followed, shuffling awkwardly, occasionally stumbling over a loose bolt or pipe. Rin had to slow his pace to let it keep up, and he felt a strange warmth in his chest he hadn't felt in years. Responsibility, connection, maybe even hope. He reached a small chamber filled with old equipment and set his pack down. The hatchling hopped off his boots and explored the room cautiously, sniffing at the corners and peeking under crates. Its wings were small, not yet strong enough to fly, and they shimmered faintly in the weak light. Rin knelt to inspect it more closely. The scales along its back were fragile and iridescent, glowing softly as if powered by some internal energy. Its tiny tail twitched as it looked at him, and for a moment, Rin forgot the dangers of the world outside this abandoned outpost. "Don't worry," he whispered. "You're safe with me." The hatchling tilted its head, chirping softly, almost as if it understood. Rin offered some of the water from his canteen, and to his surprise, the tiny creature lapped it eagerly. He realized how weak it must be, alone and newly hatched. Its nest had likely been destroyed, maybe by a storm, maybe by humans searching for valuable dragon eggs. Whatever the reason, this little being had nowhere else to go. Rin's mind raced. He knew dragons were considered extinct, wiped out by humans centuries ago. The stories spoke of their power, their intelligence, and the danger they posed if angered. But this hatchling was nothing like the legends suggested. It was small, fragile, and clearly lost. He had to protect it. He gathered some old scraps of fabric and metal to make a small shelter for the hatchling. It seemed to understand, following his hands as he fashioned a tiny nest. When he finished, the creature curled up inside, letting out a soft, contented chirp. Rin felt a sense of pride he hadn't felt in years. He had saved it and it had chosen to trust him. The rest of the morning passed in quiet companionship. Rin checked the old machinery and repaired what he could, all while keeping an eye on the hatchling. It followed him everywhere, hopping over obstacles and chirping whenever he paused. He laughed quietly at its clumsy movements. It was strange to feel joy in such a desolate place, but the hatchling's presence made it possible. Rin knew he had to plan for the future. The hatchling could not stay in the open outpost forever. Predators might find it, or the corporation that owned this planet might return, seeking the rumored dragons. He had to think of a safe place, somewhere hidden where it could grow. Yet even as he considered the dangers, he felt a strange certainty. This little creature had chosen him, and he would not abandon it. By mid-morning, the hatchling had grown bolder. It attempted to climb onto his shoulders, its claws gentle but curious. Rin laughed softly and allowed it, feeling the weight of its tiny body pressing against him. He could feel its warmth spreading through his clothes, a comforting pulse that seemed to match his own heartbeat. The bond between them was forming quickly, more quickly than he could have imagined. He decided to give it a name. Looking down at the small dragon, he said, "I'll call you Leora." The hatchling chirped again, flapping its tiny wings as if pleased. It nuzzled his hand and Rin felt a deep connection, one that transcended words. Leora was no longer just a creature he had found. She was a companion, a responsibility, and perhaps even a friend. As lunchtime approached, Rin sat on the edge of a platform, eating the small rations he carried. Leora climbed onto his boots again, curling up like she had claimed them as her home. He watched her, marveling at how something so small could carry so much life and energy. The hatchling's trust in him was complete, and he felt a sense of purpose he hadn't known in years. Suddenly, a noise from outside the outpost made him tense. The sound of engines and distant voices echoed through the fog. Rin knew the corporation's patrols were nearby, and if they discovered Leora, they would not hesitate to capture her, or worse. He looked down at the small dragon, who blinked up at him with golden eyes full of trust. He could not let anything happen to her. Rin made a quick decision. He gathered supplies and planned a small route through the old maintenance tunnels. Leora chirped and followed, slipping through the narrow passages with surprising agility. The tunnels were dark, dusty, and filled with obstacles, but together they moved carefully, communicating through chirps and soft words. Rin felt a thrill of excitement and fear. This was no longer just a routine day at the outpost. This was survival for both of them. By mid-afternoon, they reached a small chamber with a broken observation window overlooking the misty valley below. Rin set Leora down gently, and she chirped in delight, flapping her tiny wings. She had discovered sunlight, fresh air, and a view that stretched beyond the confines of the outpost. For a moment, Rin watched her, feeling the weight of responsibility settle fully on his shoulders. He had found her, protected her, and now he would guide her. Rin knew this was only the beginning. Leora was more than a hatchling. She was a spark of something ancient, a connection to a world humans thought they had destroyed. And she had chosen him. That choice, he realized, was more powerful than any weapon, any rule, or any law. It was a bond born of trust, and he would honor it. As the sun reached its highest point, Rin sat with Leora curled against his boots, feeling a rare peace. The outpost was still empty, the fog still thick, but inside something had changed. The smallest dragon had found a home, not just in the corridors of metal and rust, but in the heart of a human who had thought he had nothing left to give. Rin smiled and whispered, "We'll face whatever comes together, little one." Leora chirped, pressing closer. In that moment, the world beyond the outpost felt less dangerous, less lonely, and full of possibilities. The bond between human and dragon had begun, small but unbreakable, and nothing could undo it. Rin Calder moved carefully through the outpost corridors, Leora, the tiny dragon hatchling, clinging to his boots as usual. The fog outside was thick, curling around the metal structures, but inside the old halls, the warmth of their growing bond made the cold easier to ignore. He had spent the morning repairing minor machinery, checking air filters, and clearing debris, all while keeping an eye on the small creature that had chosen him as home. Leora's curiosity had grown with each passing hour. She would peek over edges, tap at dangling wires, and occasionally chirp as if asking questions. Rin laughed softly every time she did something new, amazed at how intelligent she seemed. It was clear she understood more than any normal animal could. She followed him loyally, never leaving his side, her tiny wings twitching as she tried to keep up with his longer strides. Rin paused in the center of the corridor, holding his hand out. Leora hopped onto it carefully, testing the weight and balance of her new perch. He felt the tiny heartbeat beneath his fingers, a rapid, rhythmic pulse that was both fragile and strong. "You really trust me, don't you?" he whispered. The hatchling chirped softly as though answering him. The day grew brighter, and with the sunlight filtering through cracks in the outpost walls, the world seemed less lonely. Yet, not everyone was happy about what Rin had found. Over the radio, he occasionally picked up chatter from the nearby corporate outpost. They had heard rumors of dragon activity, and mocked him openly, calling him a fool for chasing legends. No one could see what he saw, the loyalty, the intelligence, the small warmth radiating from Leora as if she understood him completely. Rin ignored the voices, focusing on the bond forming before him. Leora had begun to mimic simple sounds, chirping and squeaking in patterns that almost sounded like language. He realized she was trying to communicate, to understand him as he understood her. He tried simple words, gentle tones, repeating her name and offering her scraps of food. She responded with small gestures, nuzzling his fingers, curling closer, or flapping her wings lightly. By mid-afternoon, the outpost had grown quieter. Most of the human workers had left for maintenance rotations, leaving Rin alone with Leora. He took the opportunity to explore a larger chamber, one filled with old control panels and broken screens. Leora followed closely, hopping from ledge to ledge, clearly fascinated by the lights and buttons. Rin bent down to guide her away from sharp edges, laughing quietly at her persistent curiosity. It was in this quiet chamber that Rin realized something remarkable. The old machinery, some thought dead for decades, had begun to react subtly to Leora's presence. Panels flickered, lights hummed softly, and the air seemed to vibrate with energy. He tested a console carefully, and a small holographic projection flickered to life. The readings were faint, unstable, but unmistakable. The dragon's energy, even at her tiny size, was activating systems long thought dormant. Rin stared, astonished. "You're more than I imagined," he said softly. Leora chirped and flapped her wings as if acknowledging his words. He understood then that their bond was not just emotional, it was powerful. The hatchling had chosen him, and in return he was learning to understand her. He could feel a subtle link forming, something ancient and instinctive. Suddenly, a sound echoed from the outpost's main hall, a loud, mechanical clatter that set Rin on edge. Someone had entered. He crouched low, motioning for Leora to stay close. The hatchling curled against his boots, her tiny body trembling slightly, but she did not flee. She had chosen him and he had chosen her. Together they would face whatever came. A team of corporate workers entered, scanning the area with their sensors. "Nothing here," one of them muttered, but Rin knew better. If they discovered Leora, they would take her, or worse. He whispered, "Stay quiet, little one. We can't let them find you." Leora chirped softly, pressing against his boots for reassurance. Rin led her through a side corridor, the hatchling moving with surprising agility for her size. Every so often, she would look up at him with those golden eyes, and he would see trust, curiosity, and a spark of intelligence that went far beyond instinct. No one at the outpost would believe it, and that was fine. Their bond was private, sacred, and growing stronger by the minute. By evening, they reached a high observation deck overlooking the valley outside. The fog had begun to lift, revealing jagged cliffs and the sprawling ruins of ancient dragon nests far below. Leora chirped excitedly, flapping her wings and exploring the new space. Rin knelt beside her, running his fingers along her scales gently. "You're safe here," he whispered. "I'll make sure nothing harms you." The hatchling curled at his feet, glowing faintly in the fading light. Rin felt a deep sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. Humanity had long thought dragons extinct, dangerous, or useless. Yet here was one, small and vulnerable, choosing a human not for power or food but for kindness. It was a reminder of something ancient, that compassion, trust, and care could build bonds stronger than fear or greed. He realized that their bond, however small it seemed, was something no one could break. Leora had taught him patience, loyalty, and the courage to care when the world told him not to. He had saved her, yes, but in truth she had saved him too, from loneliness, from routine, from a life without connection. Rin looked out over the valley, then down at the tiny dragon curled at his boots. "We'll face whatever comes," he said softly. "Together." Leora chirped, nuzzling his foot, and for the first time in a long time Rin felt hope. As the sun set, painting the sky with soft golds and pinks, Rin knew one thing clearly: the world did not understand their bond. No one could see the depth of trust and understanding forming between a human and a dragon hatchling. But that did not matter. What mattered was the choice they had made, silently and completely, to trust each other. And that choice, Rin realized, was more powerful than any fear, any weapon, and any legend. Leora had chosen him, and he had chosen her. Nothing else mattered. Rin Calder had just settled on the observation deck, Leora curled at his boots, when the first alarms began to sound. A sharp red light flashed across the old control panels, accompanied by a low warning hum that rattled the metal walls. Rin's heart raced. "What now?" he whispered, glancing at the tiny hatchling, whose golden eyes reflected the blinking lights. She chirped nervously, pressing closer to him. He quickly scanned the system. Automated sensors had detected a foreign energy signature, the unique heat and biosigns of Leora. Centuries of dormant security protocols suddenly awakened, labeling the dragon as a potential threat. Rin's stomach dropped. If the outpost's main security systems activated fully, it would be impossible to protect her. He had to act fast. A distant rumble echoed through the corridors. Rin realized the corporate patrols were approaching, drawn by the alarms. Their scanners were sophisticated, capable of detecting energy fluctuations like Leora's. Rin had faced dangerous contractors before, but this was different. They wouldn't understand that the hatchling was not a threat. They would see only an opportunity to capture her. Rin picked up Leora carefully, holding her close. She chirped softly, her tiny wings flapping against his chest. He whispered, "It's okay. We'll get through this together." He moved quickly, using side corridors and maintenance tunnels he had explored earlier. The sounds of machinery and distant footsteps echoed behind him, growing louder with each passing second. As they navigated the outpost, the bond between them became even clearer. Leora seemed to sense the danger instinctively. She emitted a faint warmth, which Rin realized was affecting the old sensors along their path. Lights flickered, doors misread their entry codes, and some automated turrets paused, confused. It was as if her presence alone was bending the systems to their favor. Rin marveled at it even while keeping his focus on escape. They reached a larger chamber, one that opened into a collapsed section of the outpost. Through the jagged ceiling, sunlight spilled down, illuminating the ruins below. Rin hesitated. The jump to the lower level was risky, but remaining in the corridors meant facing the corporate patrols head-on. He set Leora on his shoulder and tested the pathway carefully. She chirped softly as if encouraging him. With a deep breath, Rin made the jump, landing hard but steady. Leora squeaked, gripping him tightly. He rolled to absorb the impact, then continued running through the ruins. The sound of pursuing footsteps grew fainter, though the alarms continued to flash. It was clear the outpost had recognized the anomaly, but it had not yet fully located them. Rin used the shadows and broken structures to hide, moving methodically toward a more secure area he had discovered weeks ago. Along the way he noticed something strange. The old machinery they passed seemed to respond to Leora's presence. Lights hummed softly, doors opened or closed on their own, and even the air felt warmer. Rin realized the hatchling's energy was not just biological. It interacted with technology in ways humans had long forgotten. The bond between them was not only emotional, it was changing the environment around them. By mid-afternoon, they reached a hidden observation chamber that overlooked a vast valley. Rin set Leora down gently. She scampered forward, exploring the new space, chirping excitedly. Rin watched her, feeling a mix of awe and fear. The valley below was empty, but the alarms above reminded him that the world outside their small haven would soon notice. A sudden vibration shook the floor. Rin turned sharply, seeing a patrol drone descending from the ceiling. Its scanners glowed red, searching for energy signatures. He froze. Leora chirped nervously and he held her close. Thinking quickly, he remembered the small vents in the corner of the room. He ran, ducking through the narrow passage, Leora clinging to his shoulder. The drone hovered, scanning, then emitted a frustrated beep before retreating. Rin exhaled sharply. That was too close, he whispered. Leora chirped softly in response, nuzzling his neck. He realized then that their bond gave them more than comfort, it gave them strength. The hatchling's instinctive abilities, combined with his knowledge of the outpost, allowed them to survive in ways neither could alone. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Rin found a small ledge where they could rest. He set Leora down, watching her curl against his boots. Despite the danger, she seemed calm, almost proud of the day's events. Rin smiled, feeling a deep sense of connection. He knew that no one else would understand what had happened, but that did not matter. Their bond was real, unbreakable, and growing stronger with every challenge. Night fell, and the valley below turned dark and silent. The alarms had faded, but the patrols would return. Rin knew this was only the beginning. Leora had changed everything, not just his life but the balance of the outpost itself. Her presence had awakened ancient systems, hinted at powers humans could no longer control, and proven that even the smallest being could alter the world. Rin sat quietly, Leora resting on his boots, her tiny claws gripping gently. "We'll face them together," he whispered. She chirped as if understanding. For the first time, Rin realized that this small creature, dismissed by the world as nothing more than a myth, was showing humanity a lesson. That courage, loyalty, and trust could awaken forces far older and stronger than any machine or weapon. The bond they shared had become something extraordinary. Leora's choice to stay with him and his choice to protect her had set a chain of events in motion that neither could have predicted. The world might soon notice, but it would be too late to break what had begun. The hatchling had chosen him and he had chosen her. Together they were stronger than fear, stronger than doubt, and stronger than any force that sought to control them. As darkness settled over the valley, Rin knew one thing clearly: the world had noticed them now, but it could not understand them. No one could see the trust, the care, or the bond that had formed between a human and a dragon hatchling. That bond was invisible, powerful, and unshakable. And in that quiet moment, with Leora glowing softly against his boots, Rin Calder felt hope. Real hope, the kind that came from knowing that even in a dangerous, uncaring world, a small choice, to protect, to care, to trust, could change everything. Rin Calder watched the valley below in silence, Leora curled against his boots, her tiny body warm and pulsing with life. The outpost's alarms had stopped, but he knew it was only temporary. The corporate patrols would return, and this time they would bring more drones, more weapons, and more scanners. Yet for the first time Rin did not feel fear. Leora's presence had changed everything. She had chosen him, and together, they had awakened something ancient and powerful. As the first stars appeared in the sky, the valley began to shimmer with a faint, golden light. Rin noticed immediately that the old ruins, long thought dead, were reacting to Leora's energy. Panels on broken machinery flickered to life, and dormant structures vibrated gently, almost as if recognizing her. The hatchling chirped, tilting her head as she sensed the energy flowing through the planet itself. Rin's heart leapt. This was no ordinary dragon. She was a key, a connection between humanity and the creatures of old. Rin set Leora on his shoulder, and she wrapped her tiny claws around him, resting her head near his neck. "You're incredible," he whispered. "I think we can do more than just survive. We can protect." She chirped in agreement, her golden eyes shining brightly. Rin realized that the bond between them was no longer just trust, it was a partnership. Together they could face the world whatever it might bring. Suddenly the sound of engines echoed through the valley. The patrols had returned, larger in number and more determined. Rin felt the weight of responsibility pressing down, but he did not panic. He placed Leora carefully on the ground and watched as she unfurled her small wings. They were still weak, but the shimmer of her scales grew brighter, almost like she was gathering energy from the world around her. The drones hovered closer, scanning for her heat signature. Leora chirped, and to Rin's astonishment, the machines hesitated, flickering and pausing as if confused. The ancient systems beneath the valley had awakened, responding to her presence, shielding her in ways he could not fully understand. Rin realized that the smallest dragon had become humanity's oldest ally. The creatures long thought extinct were not gone. They were waiting for a human to choose care over greed, protection over power. One by one the drones began to retreat, their signals disrupted by Leora's energy. The patrols shouted into radios, confused and frustrated, but they could not advance further. Rin smiled, feeling a surge of pride and relief. The hatchling had defended herself and him without violence, simply by being who she was. And he had helped her, guided her, and believed in her. Their bond had changed the outcome entirely. As the night deepened, more lights appeared across the ruins. Shadows of larger dragons began to emerge from hidden valleys, drawn by the energy of their young kin. Rin could hardly believe his eyes. The legends were true, dragons had not been destroyed. They had survived, hidden, waiting for humans who could respect and protect them. And now, through the bond of one small hatchling, the guardians of old had returned. Leora chirped excitedly, climbing onto Rin's shoulder once more. He laughed softly, feeling the joy and wonder of the moment. "You've done this, little one," he said. "You've brought them back." Her golden eyes blinked, and she nuzzled him gently as if acknowledging the truth of his words. Rin knew then that his life and the life of humanity had changed forever. The valley below filled with dragons of all sizes, their scales glinting under the starlight. They moved gracefully, not in aggression but in curiosity and recognition. They had been waiting for a sign, and Leora had given it. Rin stood taller, feeling a sense of responsibility and pride. Humanity was not the conqueror they believed themselves to be. Instead, they had a chance to be allies, to learn from creatures older and wiser than themselves. Rin glanced down at Leora. "We've started something bigger than both of us," he said softly. "They're back, because of you." She chirped, and he felt the warmth of her energy spread through him, filling him with courage and hope. The world outside might still doubt them, fear them, or even try to harm them, but now Rin knew that humans were not alone. They had allies who had walked the stars long before them, and who would stand beside them if treated with respect. The first patrols, seeing the dragons awaken, slowly retreated to report what they had witnessed. No one could deny the signs. The legends were true, and humans had found a path to coexistence. Rin understood that the small choices, the acts of care and trust, had shifted the balance of an entire world. One human had protected one dragon hatchling, and that hatchling had, in turn, awakened the power of the ancient species. Rin sat down on a rock, Leora curled comfortably against his boots. The dragons above and below moved with calm assurance, watching him and the hatchling yet giving space. Rin knew that this was a beginning, not an end. He would guide Leora as she grew, teach her and learn from her. In return, she would show him and humanity the ways of her kind, the lessons of patience, wisdom and strength without violence. As the night grew darker, Rin whispered, "We'll face the future together, little one. You and I, we're not alone anymore." Leora chirped softly in agreement, pressing closer. In that quiet, glowing moment, Rin Calder understood that hope had returned to a world that had long thought dragons were lost. Humanity had not conquered the past, they had been chosen by it, guided by a bond of trust and care. The small hatchling had followed him all morning, had chosen his feet as home, and in doing so, had reminded him of something profound. Even the tiniest being could change the course of history, and the simplest act of kindness could awaken the greatest power. Rin looked out at the valley, at the dragons, at the stars above, and felt something he had not felt in years. Pride, joy, hope. And in the quiet glow of that night, he knew one simple truth. Dragons were back and humanity had found its oldest, most loyal ally once again.